Hello, everybody. My name's Nicole Glenn, and I am one of the many, as you could see, co-host of the LLC podcast. It's an honor to introduce listeners to inspiring women who are making a real difference in logistics and supply chain. With the LLC podcast, you'll hear inspirational stories, both personal and professional challenges our guests overcame, how their backgrounds help shape who they are today, and how they empower others, giving back to their communities and in the world. So today's a little different. We tend to have guests come on and they get to tell us their stories on what they've overcome in their past. But today we're bringing a special panel of all the ladies together. And we wanted to dive in and really talk about 2023 and 2024 when we're talking about trade shows, conferences, events, like what has been great for us. So let's just dive right in, ladies. So Sharon, you are to my right. I wanted to start with you. Like, give me some insight on where you've been and what has been awesome for you and where you're headed.
Okay, so last year, I haven't been to any conferences yet this year. I'm still trying to decide which ones I want to attend. Last year, I went to several, and I wasn't sure after I went that it was necessarily what I needed to go to. So I'm trying to be a little more mindful about where I'm spending the money and where I can get the best bang for my buck. And so last year I went to TIA in Florida, and it was a good conference. You always learn a lot there. I really enjoyed the Women in Logistics Luncheon. I felt like that's where I got the most out of it because so many women there going through challenges. And Liz invited me to speak at the luncheon. And then afterwards, so many women came up and wanted to talk and hear more of my story. And so I think that's where you have a good networking start there and you learn so much from them. So I'm not going to go to TIA this year. I decided since I went last year, I'm going to skip a year. But then I went to the CMSCP with you ladies. We all spoke there.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a good networking group. Where else did I go last year? I went to Women in Trucking. So Women in Trucking is an easy one for me to go to because it's in Dallas and I don't have to pay for the hotel, so you kind of look at where you're going, what it's going to cost. It's not just the conference itself. It's that I was on a mentoring panel there. And I met the people at the Tenny group. So you meet a lot of great people and everybody's friendly and excited and mostly women. So you learn a lot. And so, I'll probably go again this year. Matter of fact, I just put my application in to speak, but we'll see. We'll see. So
yeah, all of us are speakers for the most part. We're usually on panels and talking at these. I know it's a little different for us.
It is a little different.
Yeah.
So my topic would be what I've submitted is running on empty, the burnout. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do. So this coming year, I'm looking at some conferences. I'm looking at work. Have y'all ever been to that one? WERC?
No.
It's actually their annual conference is in June in Dallas, actually. It's a distribution conference. So there's a lot of customers that are going to be there that you can meet. So I'm kind of looking at that this year. Where can I meet new customers and network that way? We know a lot of people in supply chain, but you want to grow your business, so you want to meet the flip side of the table. So anyway, I'm working on that.
For sure. You said WERC? Okay, perfect. I love to take notes in these so I learn. Charlie, where'd you go and where are you headed?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I think it's so interesting, though, to hear each other's strategies, because this is a big topic at our firm where we're like, there are so many opportunities. How do we determine where to put our time, our budget? And I think like what's most underrated is our energy. These conferences are exhausting. So, and I think all of us, like we will go to a conference Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, get home Wednesday night at 10, and like Thursday, Friday are regular jam-packed days, right? Like
catch-up days too. Yeah. You're cramming all your normal stuff in there.
And then a lot of these conferences slide into the weekend. So then your weekend shot. But I'm very curious to hear your strategies, because I'm in that spot where it's like, am I going to learn and that's it? And if I, bring home knowledge, then I did my job. Am I going for business development? Am I going for partnerships, or am I going because I'm speaking or I have a booth, or, and so we're starting to kind of categorize like why we actually go to conferences and what the ROI looks like. So I've been to TPM. Nicole, I saw you there this year. It's a great attendee list, I would say, like probably one of the most established senior level decision maker attendee groups I've seen at conferences. But I'll be honest, it's a tough conference to network at least for me. It's just a sea of suits. I don't know if you felt the same way, Nicole, but I felt like I really could break through there. Like I had a speaking opportunity, and exactly what you said, Sharon, like after I shared my story, that's when my networking really took place, because people wanted to connect over that. So I think that's a strategy in itself. I will be at the TIA in April for like a jam-packed few days. Like TPM, we distinguish as more of a new business type of, spend or investment, because it's mostly maritime space, versus TIA, like it's mostly friendly faces to us. And that's also worth our investment to go there just to keep up with people and be able to see all of our, clients and former clients in one spot over 3 days. So got that coming up. TMSA, I will probably be at in New Orleans in June. And then I think we have a couple like culture or HR related recruiting conferences, but I feel like there's like a pretty distinguished break, like July, August, right? And then we pick back up again, and it's full speed till December. So I'll probably attend, I'm going to say 7 or 8 of them this year, all in, for different reasons.
So the transportation marketing, it's called TSMA. There's so many acronyms.
Yeah. TMSA.
TMSA. Is that something you've gone to as well, Blythe? I would assume,
yes.
Right?
I'm on the board for the TMSA. Today, as of recording this, today is our 100-year anniversary.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many associations have been around for that long. I don't know of very many that have been around for 100 years, but it's pretty cool to think about, just the evolution of not just the industry, but marketing and sales within the industry. And so it's very much ever since Jennifer Carpus Romaine took over a couple of years ago, she's really been, sort of pulling the association into the modern digital age, where a lot of networking was taking place at events and at trade shows. But now they're moving more into, sort of the digital aspect, and have been moving more into that arena over the last few years, especially since COVID, because COVID kind of, a majority of our income revenue came from in-person events. And so they really had to switch. And I think, comparative to a lot of businesses, it was really the driving for 2020 was the driving factor to digitize your events and your strategy and your marketing. And so celebrating that 100 years in New Orleans in June. So looking forward to that immensely.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, if you are going and say you're a person that's in sales or in marketing, like, are there different tracks? Like, what does that event actually look like?
It's mainly geared. So there's 2 premier events that the TMSA throws. So there's one that's for practitioners, and that's the one that we're referring to with June. So, anybody who is in sales or marketing, there's a bunch of different panel discussions. Last year we had the Savannah Bananas. They came in and gave a great presentation. We got to go to one of their games in order to see, just how they approach marketing and brand awareness. They recently just sold out an MLB stadium. So they've only been around for a few years too, but just their approach to marketing was really inspirational. And so they were the keynote last year. We're working on our speaker lineups and announcements that are coming out soon. But that we really have, sort of the keynote focus. And then we have breakaway sessions for more focused sales and marketing efforts. We also bring in shippers as well, so we can kind of hear from the firsthand view. Last year was really interesting because we had on the shipper panel, there were a couple people that were letting us know from the shipper side of things, like, we can tell if you are sending tip-loaded emails, because in HubSpot, colors the emails differently. The font color is different on the receiving end. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people knew, that when you're sending these emails, they all look fine to you, but in maybe Outlook or Gmail, that those templated emails are coming across in a different color font. So they know right away, shippers know right away if you're sending them a templated email or a personalized email. And so they were saying these little things that, you could kind of tweak in your own messaging in order to stand out from the rest, which was really interesting.
Interesting.
They are getting so many emails in a day. I actually feel bad for them. I know how many I get. Oh my gosh. I feel like I always junk it too, so that you don't come back.
Don't come
Right?
back.
Yep. It's block and report spam.
Yeah, exactly. Something that's interesting about the TMSA, and I've never put this together till you were just talking about it, is it's an audience of sales and marketing professionals. And like, these people come to this conference, there's so much energy there. And it's like a different energy than, your executive decision makers, because these are all people who are there to network and build relationships. So I'd say TMSA it's definitely one of like the friendlier conferences. Jennifer does an amazing job putting together like specific opportunities to network and learn and, meet with people. But it's also the audience is just, it's like, isn't it a funny way to think about it? It's just like a friendly, high vibe audience because of the roles.
Well,
They're all A personalities.
Exactly.
But you would also think that there would be competition amongst people, but it's really not, because most marketing and sales teams are very small in their office. They're very small.
Yeah.
A lot of marketers, there's one person marketing teams across all of logistics. And so when they come to this conference, that's their chance to really feel like they're among their people.
Right.
And they don't feel so alone. That's the impression that I get. And so you have on one end of the spectrum where it's like a manifest where thousands of people are going, and that's fantastic. But then on the flip side, you have, a couple hundred people that, I think we have about 240 people that came to last year's event. And it just feels like a large family where everybody kind of knows everybody. And if you don't, you're eventually going to talk to them at some point during the conference.
Exactly. And that's how TIA feels to me too. But that's after many, many years of attending.
So Blythe, I know you are like the conference queen. So I always I'm like, how is she not exhausted?
I don't want this title because I burned myself out last year, truthfully. And I only went to 7 conferences. Like I hear Charlie talking about, we're going to 7 or 8. And I'm like, ooh, like that. I just know that for a small team, I now have a digital marketing assistant, which works with me, which is fantastic. She's taken a lot of the workload off. So if you see a lot of like my social videos and things like that, that's her. That's the beauty of, sort of a growing business, is she can take some of that stuff off of my plate. But I just burned myself out last year because it's a lot of what you ladies were talking about. It's not just the expense of going to the event, but it's the prep leading up to it. It's being away from work while you're at it, and then it's the follow-up after the fact. It's something I still struggle with this year. So this year was a very conscious effort of, we're going to scale back, and so I'm only doing 4 events this year. So I knocked 2 of them out already in back-to-back weeks in Vegas like a crazy person, but I did manifest, and then I did this other conference called CLDA, and it's the Final Mile Forum, and it's very much just like TMSA, where it's a little bit smaller of a crowd, but you kind of got to know everybody there. And it was a sector of the business that I didn't really know much about, whereas, it's these courier services that are all around the country. And then you have these different associations. One of the key things that I learned from that conference is all of these manufacturers all over the globe are looking to do business with couriers in the United States. And so they just don't know who they are. And so making those connections was really valuable to a lot of folks at that event. So I'll be, so that was a really fun event. Obviously I'll be at TMSA in June, and then F3 in November, which FreightWaves Future of Freight Festival. So that's the one that I typically go to. I know that they have another one, the Future of Supply Chain, in the middle, like over the summer, I think around the June timeframe too. But like I said, I'm trying to cut back and trying to pick like those premier events that I want to go to. I did do TIA last year. loved it. But this year it's the same week as the Masters. And my dad had got tickets for the first time ever to go to the Masters. So I'm going with him that week. So
That's fun.
it's little dad-daughter day, even though my uncle's going to and my brother, but still.
So the FreightWaves conferences, have you guys been? I mean, Blythe, you've been there, but Charlie, Sharon, have you guys ever attended?
I haven't, and I looked. I mean, they've got one in Atlanta, June 4th and 5th.
Yeah.
And I've got it on my calendar to look at it because I'm thinking about going this year.
Okay.
Yeah, make sure you know, because they do these like subtopics. So like Sharon, my bet, Blythe would maybe know more, but like the November conference is probably.
Is it better?
I don't know, because I don't know what's in Atlanta, but they have, you know, like a digital group and very, you know, smaller niche conferences. I mean, I would say FreightWaves conference is the place to be. It's like you're going to have FOMO if you don't go, kind of like Manifest. It's a party. It's a huge party, right? Like it is 3 days of partying. So it's the right people. They do things a little differently. Like it's not your traditional expo floor, but I've only been once. And I think it's always in Chattanooga, their main one where they are.
So yeah, they set up this regular cadence where the November, well, I think it's only as of last year, but the November event is going to be the one that's always in Chattanooga, Future of Freight Festival, and then the summertime one is they're going to pick different cities. So I think it was last year, the year before, it was in Arkansas, which was right next to JB Hunt headquarters, Walmart headquarters. So it was really cool to have all of those different conglomerates like right there and all of those people were coming to the conference as well. So this year that conference is in Atlanta. And so I think that's also, they've done it in Chicago in the past as well. So that's the one that kind of travels around, but the Chattanooga is beautiful. I've been to that conference twice now. And each time I go, I'm like, next time I have to remember to stay a few extra days just to be able to do like maybe some hiking or stuff. Cause it's such a cute downtown and they kind of shut it all down just for this conference. So that's cool to see too.
And
so I mean, what type of return on your investment? Like who are you meeting there? What's the strategy when you go to like F3?
For me, it's all networking. So it was interesting to hear Charlie's approach of how she figures out which one is for business development, which one is for learning. I'm going to write that one down actually, because I need to practice that. Because this one, F3 and Manifest, and I would say TMSA too, are all pretty much networking for me. So I hardly ever, check out the talks. I'm networking and I'm on the expo floor. If they don't have an expo floor, then I will go to the talks, of course, or maybe record some content. So that's kind of the way that I approach it, is either I'm networking to try to get business, especially for the podcast now that I'm fully independent. So it's important to like meet companies that can either be a guest on the podcast or who are interested in partnering up for the podcast. So it's really all about networking for me and meeting as many people as I can for those two goals, either as a guest or for partnership inquiries.
Sure. So we talked about, before we even hit the button to start the recording of this, last year, I went to Women in Supply Chain Summit, and that was in Atlanta. And I thought it was such a great conference. I highly suggest to men and women to take a look at this conference. We definitely need men as supporters to women in supply chain and logistics.
It's very intimate though. Like it just felt very supportive and intimate, men and women in that room, but that was a great show.
Yeah. I mean, we had a lot of great speakers there, and it was just like you talked to your table. Like we sat down at the start of the day.
I still communicate with two people from my table. Yeah, like months later, we're on a chat together.
And it just felt like each table like kind of developed a friendship and camaraderie to start being vulnerable, right? And understand what the obstacles are, and then kind of lean on each other on how to like get over some of those things. So that was one of those. I came out and I was like, I felt like, hi, like, yay, that was so cool.
I want to say, don't quote me on this if it was like a rule or if it just happened this way, but something interesting about that conference is there were no PowerPoints. Do you realize that, Nicole? Like every everything that was educational or a speaker was either like a panel or a fireside chat or a keynote, but like there were no slide shows to sit through, which actually now I'm like, that's kind of genius because that is what connected us and kept everyone engaged because they had, just good content and the way they delivered it.
Mhm.
But that's an interesting point, just PowerPoint or no, and what that does to the crowd.
It does. It does make a difference. I
When
belong.
when is it going to be this year?
I mean, we could look. I think it's in October,
Is it?
and it was recently announced. I know Marina recently announced that. So, and I don't think that conference is insanely expensive to attend. They did pick
again.
they picked a great hotel last time too, like where we actually had the conference at. It was called the Cooley.
I loved that
It
hotel.
was such a fun. I swear it was like just made for women. Like the rooms were so cool. Like you walked in, there was just this vibe in this hotel that was very like chic.
Boutique, yeah.
Yeah, it was like I really liked that conference from start to finish. I thought it was great.
I don't think I left the hotel, but that's usually my style when I go to conferences. I don't get out much, but that's, it's the energy and the investment. Can we chat about that real quick? Like what from a cost standpoint, like how much does that influence your decision making? Because I think it's really interesting how there are so many inconsistencies with how much a ticket costs, if there's an early bird, if there's a discount, if there's a sponsorship opportunity, if you're given a credit, if you are going to speak or, but it can add up. And I think that's something, I mean, that we're really starting to look at is like, yeah, what's the best bang for our buck and where are we guaranteed ROI? Even if it's not tomorrow, a lot of our ROI comes in a year or so, but like really gauging what's worth it.
Well, I think it's having a strategy in advance and start understanding what is your planned ROI from a conference, because I know at least from TPM and even food shippers and a lot of the ones that are geared towards, carriers, brokers, as well as shippers, it could be a little hard to actually get an appointment if you are just trying to sit in a bar, like try to make a friend. But if you take this proactive approach and start understanding who's going to be in attendance, you then start, hitting up those apps. That's a great thing now that you can do, which is taking the app, divide and conquer. And if you have another teammate going and try to maximize your appointments, I think those are the best way to look at it. So I try to always bring at least one additional person with me, but it does make a difference too. Like if a ticket is $1,800, because some of them are really high, I'll say, well, it's just me or it's just so-and-so and go represent, wear a canter shirt, go meet as many people as you can.
And it's so true. If it's in your hometown, like Sharon, you know, the Dallas ones are, kind of no brainers.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about Chicago, but we don't see a lot of conferences in Chicago, maybe just because there's like 4 months where it's safe to do it. But
you have JOC Inland, which I went to in October this last year. And
TMSA executive was in Chicago this year.
That's right.
Yeah, so that was the Inland Conference was great. That's through the JOC, and it was smaller. I think it had like 500 people in attendance, but it had just a mix of people, and it was, I think, October too. So the weather was still doable. That's the hard part about Chicago, the weather.
Exactly. So is that event, the Inland, is it connected to TPM at all, or it's just the same master organizer?
It's the same group.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think they have quite a few different ones that they put on. Like there's a break bulk one that's happening in April.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so they have different like transportation categories. So Inland is all about the domestic transportation.
Over the road. And okay, got it.
All of that. Whereas when we saw with TPM, that is global, and that's a lot of maritime and ocean and air. So it's just, every walk of life showed up at TPM, where, the Inland is really just about what's going on here. So I thought it was great.
What about Modex? Have any of y'all been to Modex?
No.
That was just like last week, and it seems like a lot of people were there, but I don't know.
I heard 60,000 people show up to that.
My
What?
goodness.
which is insane. And I've also heard that their expo floor is free. So you can go. It was in Atlanta, and so you're able to walk the expo floor if you wanted to, but you couldn't go into any of the sessions that required a ticket. And so that one is definitely on my list for next year, is to check that one out. But I have heard it's more like warehousing, robotics. But if you've been to Manifest and were impressed by a lot of the expo floor displays there, I've heard Modex is just on another level, where some of the setups at Manifest, the roof was, or the chandeliers that were coming down prevented some of the robotic displays from being on like full, I guess their full display. They had to downscale it a little bit. But Modex is the place where they, the booth size is just incredible.
Interesting.
So that one it definitely interests me because it doesn't have a cost. I could just go to the expo floor and check out, because that's where I get the most energy, is on the expo floor, meeting a bunch of people and seeing all of the cool tech like in action.
Yeah. So fun to just walk around and take it all in.
Yes.
Get some freebies. Do you all go to any user conferences? Because I know there's a lot in our industry, and I've kind of dabbled, whether it's DAT or McLeod. I've attended Trimble a few times to speak, and I find that to be a really good conference. But anyone attending
I've done DatCon twice. I was a speaker 2 times, but I did see that there was a lot of value on just the conversation, especially for the broker side. They do have a shipper day, and I know that they've been expanding that. So they'll bring shippers in first. They try to almost protect them, because when you're thinking about carriers and brokers, I mean, it's a pack of hyenas, So they do shipper day and go through all that. And then shippers are welcome to stay. And then they really talk about, what's the new technology that they're doing. This year, they talked a lot about freight fraud and how they were trying to develop different things to help with that. And then they dove into like AI and how is that going to be changing for the DAT. So I found it to be a great conference, very educational.
Yeah, that's one I'm planning on going to because they are a vendor of ours at Talon. I want to have some conversations with them because I know there's been some issues lately. They're always down, always, and they're not cheap. I mean, you pay a lot of money for this service, and I want to know what's going on. So,
Sure. I would suggest finding out before October, Sharon. So
I will. I definitely. We got a refund yesterday after a big battle with them, but we've talked to them in the past. They know who we are. We know who they are, and they've asked us to actually sit on one of their councils. So, it's just. But I want to go there. I haven't been before. I want to go and see.
It's in Houston every year. Yeah.
Well, it's this year. It's going to be in Kansas City.
Oh, so they changed it up. Okay.
It's October 22nd, 24th.
Okay.
A lot of overlap in the fall.
There is. Has anyone been to Broker Carrier Summit?
No, but I heard good things about it.
Yeah.
Because I think Trey Griggs, he does a lot of promo for them or helps them out with a lot of their marketing. So I've heard great things. They had their first one last year, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had a crazy amount of attendance for their first, and they have another one planned coming up, I think, soon in Kansas City as well.
Oh, wow.
So I've heard great things about that. Good networking opportunity there, and a lot of trade secret learnings when people are talking about best practices and stuff. So yeah. What about Truck and Hustle? Has anyone gone to Truck and Hustle?
Oh, I do really want to go. Their Freight Fest event. I do really want to go to that. But it's not going to happen for me this year because the back half of the year I'm getting married. So I got to save the money and the time off for that. But that's usually in July or August, I think.
I thought it was September.
Oh, I should probably get those date right.
Somebody who created, was it it's Vanna? Do you know what I'm talking? So somebody created like an awesome master conference list.
Yeah, it was Don Everett over at Freight Vanna, and Lars did too, but he's now with Chima, I think Truckline.
But it's like you need to see it on a calendar and all the overlaps, and there's several conferences I've gone to where like I've gotten off the plane in the airport multiple people on my flight that I know, but we're all going to different conferences.
Oh,
Saying like in Orlando or something, or in LA, but I think there's a lot of overlap. So that's another thing you have to think about when you're planning.
yeah. Well, going back to kind of the best practices, like I was talking about, and then I want to ask you guys, how far in advance, like what's your strategy that you do when you're trying to like actually develop a return, say to get a new prospect? How do you guys approach these types of conferences then?
I'm going to be honest. And even though we were just talking about this, and on the receiving end, I'm not a fan, but a big part of our strategy depends on if we're going to get a list of attendees or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really hard thing. Like, it's pretty consistent, but it may come out 6 weeks in advance or 3 days before the event. And it may come with or without email addresses. So I don't know if anyone else thinks about that stuff as much as I do, but I'm like, why can't they just all be standard? We either know or not.
Well, this was on my desk. It was food shippers. They give you after my team went, they give you literally everyone's name who was
Oh,
in
wow.
attendance and email. They do it every year. And to honestly say, it is a reason why we go back, because it's beyond the conference. You make those connections, but then you get to actually leave the conference and wait some time because everybody's getting, blasted
Right.
with every email, and then try to reach out. But then we use this list next year, right? So now we go,
Smart.
who came the year before? And so we reach back out, like months in advance and say, hey, who's attending? Would love to catch up with you, and then start filling up that appointment side. I think this year my team, because it was the same exact time as TPM, I think they had like 23 appointments with different shippers, and carriers during that time.
I know I used to go to the one in Houston there. I can't remember the name of it, but it was the oil and gas industry in Houston. It's every May, and it's a huge conference, and it's any company that has anything to do with oil and gas. I mean, that's when you find out all the products that are made with gas and oil, and why it's so important to continue to have gas in our industry. But it's usually in 3 buildings. But they do the same thing. They used to give the book just like that, and they would have it be this thick. Now they put it on an app, and so if you whether you attend or not, you can still get the app with all the attendees and their phone numbers and their addresses and everything. So it's really a good place to get a lot of contacts if you're in sales or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, these apps now are great. I mean, they did have that at TPM. The only problem is not everybody wants to get peppered with, meeting requests. So it's one of those where, it could be kind of a challenge. But when we were all at CSCMP last year, I was sitting there and I'm like sending messages through the app during the conference. And I think I got like 5 or 6 appointments that day. Yeah. Just saying, hey, we've tried to reach out to you in the past. Perfect. We're standing in the same building. Let's do this. And I mean, it literally led to some business for us. So again, utilizing that app, at least getting people's names. You can, if they're not on the app, go to LinkedIn, send them a message there. But obviously the sooner the better, because everybody is doing the same thing.
There was Shaylin Dixon. She's the CEO of Scale Logistics. She came on my podcast a while ago, which we should actually get her on for this show too, because she's amazing. But she talks about her action plan of when she goes to a conference, and what she'll do is that she'll find out which companies are going through the app or through the website, and then she'll find the leadership team and she will connect with them on LinkedIn, but she won't send them any kind of sales message just yet. But then when she's actually at the conference, she prints out a sheet of the expo floor, and she highlights in different color coded ways, where she puts like green around, the ones that she wants to approach, that could be good for money. But then she will go to that booth and just introduce herself to the booth, take a photo with someone at the booth, and then she will go back to that LinkedIn connection that she already had, and then say, hey, it was so great to meet so-and-so at your booth. We should connect soon. And it was a really it feels, I think, more of an authentic way of connecting with someone without it being an overtly salesy pitch.
Yeah.
So she was able to connect with them ahead of time, take a picture with them during the event, and then establish that relationship and then build on it after the fact. And so I told her I was going to steal that idea. So if anybody else wants to steal it too,
You
feel
make me
free.
feel really bad about my strategy. I'm like, I just show up and hope for the best. But that's amazing that that's the way to do it. Again, it's just the resources and the capacity to be able to plan like that. But man, she's looking for a side hustle.
Yeah,
Right.
She could be
Really
her conference PA.
schedule.
Yeah.
Well, do you find that it's easier to get an appointment with someone at a conference? Because I know a lot of people, they're just kind of walking around alone. Some people don't know very many people. So if somebody approaches them and said, hey, do you want to meet? They might meet you there because, they'd like to come, like to be able to meet someone at the conference one-on-one. So.
Yeah, I was surprised at CSCMP. I literally thought that I would just get the Heisman, but I didn't. And I think I had, like I said, five meetings, I think.
Nice.
And it was great. So again, I think the more proactive approach, and then if you're a return person, that really helps you, because then you start establishing in advance and having that mindset of connecting with everybody in advance. And then hopefully you're putting out good content. These prospects that you like are starting to see who you are. So then when you do reach out, your chances are even greater, right?
I was at a conference one time and watching a program, and the person sitting next to me was actually a shipper. And we just, started a conversation, and it was before Thanksgiving, and they needed somebody to help them ship frozen turkeys. And I thought, I can do that. And so we just built up this conversation. So it just, sometimes you just don't know who you're sitting next to.
I had that at Food Shippers once. I sat at the bar and I gave a guy, I dished him some crap, just kidding around, right? And I'm like, where's your name tag? He's like, I don't wear one, I'm a shipper. So then we started talking, and he ended up being the director of Nestle Waters. And they were doing their carrier conference at this, right after. So they were pulling a lot of people who they'd already worked with. And he's like, come to our carrier conference. And we actually won, we worked with Nestle then, won Carrier of the Year for them. And it all started by hosting a conversation, giving someone some crap and being a normal human. And it turned into, he's still a good friend of mine to this day. He doesn't even
That's
work
cool.
I used to ship a lot of furniture. And so I went to the furniture show in North Carolina that they have every year. And I was sitting at the bar just after the show was exhausted. And this guy walks up, and he's sitting there and he orders a drink. And I looked, and he had a name tag on. I said, oh, I've been at the show all day. And I looked at his name tag. He was a guy that I had been trying to get an appointment with for a year. And I said, I need to talk to you. So,
Serendipitous.
you just got to be willing to talk to strangers and not be afraid to.
Yeah. Does any of you guys sponsor anything? Because I know some of the sponsorship at these conferences is very, very pricey at most of them. But have you guys ever done anything like that?
I tried it one time at the truck show. And I also tried it one time to do
Mid-America Truck Show or whatever.
The American Truck Show in Dallas. But I also had a booth there to try to recruit. So not just drivers, but agents and things like that. The driver was a little easier than any, the agents, but met a lot of people at the truck show as well. I like the expo there. I like to go see the trucks and see what all the new, bells and whistles. So
sure. Charlie, have you ever sponsored or had a booth or anything?
We do a booth at TIA, and it's almost like we're at a point where it's just like a staple. We know we're going to be there in the same corner or around the same corner and, have the traffic. So I feel like we're locked in for life, but it's a good thing. And we get to, again, see all of our clients. I'm trying to think. I don't think we've ever actually done a sponsorship where you're going to see our logo on a lanyard or, a bag or something. But I don't know. I feel like I prefer to share knowledge than paying. I really can't stand conferences that, we'll reach out about speaking and then I'm like, oh, I'm interested. I want to learn more. And they're like, great. It's a $5,000 buy-in or a $20,000.
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't want me, if you just want me for my money, I'm not interested. So
Right.
that's a huge turnoff to me. But
Makes me actually think their conference is not credited because
Mhm.
it's like you're not even putting an industry expert there. You're just
wouldn't
putting
believe.
whoever will pay the most money. I agree with you at that.
I have
for
learned
sure.
so much about some of these associates. I'm like, and then you actually, if you are at the conference and you know that, and you're watching these people and you're like, how'd that guy get on stage? Like, oh, I know how he got on stage.
Yeah.
$10,000.
Mhm.
I mean, it could be like 10 grand to do it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, I heard a booth at, I'm not going to say the show, but one of the shows we've been talking about is $65,000 for a 10 by 10.
Wow.
So yeah.
It needs to be that one with 65,000 attendees to pay
With them locked into the trade show area and not leaving.
And that doesn't even include the booth or the giveaways or the people, you know, but yeah, these are investments, time and financial.
Yeah, I know. And it's really hard, but at the same time, it's some people do really, really well, walking in and establishing their brand. The brand part is so important. I think which one did I recently go to? Oh, hold on. Manifest. They had so many different rooms and areas to go check out. It was so cool to see how they like kind of, segmented the different types of vendors.
Mhm.
And I mean, there's some though that it's like it may be pricey, but if you get the right audience there and it's part of your strategy, I think it could do really well. I think it's just knowing how to utilize that information and see what.
Exactly.
When I worked for a Canadian company, I went to a conference. It was in Myrtle Beach, and it was a really interesting concept because it was shippers and carriers. And the show itself, if you were an attendee, they actually set up appointments with the shipper and the carrier. And so there were 2 days where you had 30-minute appointments throughout the day with actual people that were interested in your service. And I'd never been to one like that before, but it was very interesting. And they had speakers there as well. It was really a well put on show. And I wonder why other people don't do that.
Yeah, the ECA does that. So that is really around the Expedited and Courier Association. And they have the shippers and then the carrier or brokers come and you literally speed date. And so they actually, you go on and you fill out this form of who you are. And then the shippers come and put, what they're looking for. And then they do some sort of matching, and then you get your whole day of appointments.
Yeah, and it's really worth your time because you're actually there doing what you intend to do, and there's a big rate of return for that.
Even if you get one customer out of the deal, sometimes that's all you need is just, can you get one customer, a reoccurring customer, you're not looking for one and done, right?
I know it sounds like forced and kind of cheesy, but I really, I like the idea of at some point in the conference early on, like a prearranged, not just like networking, a cocktail hour, you're going to walk in and everyone's going to be, with their friends and in small circles, but like the prearranged speed dating or networking or pull a card and you go to the red table. Like I think conferences that can kind of warm the audience up and the attendees up that way turn out whatever it is. Sometimes it's just a topic on a lunch table and you start to talk about that and then you end up just talking about whatever.
We did that at Women in Trucking last year. I was in the speed mentoring. I was one of the speed mentors. So, and I was, how is this going to work? But it was the mentors that moved around from table to table. And I thought when they first sent out the information, I thought you had to be able to talk about 8 different topics, but it wasn't the case. You just had one topic and you just went to each table and spoke on the same thing.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it could be very well done if it's executed the right way and very valuable.
Here in Jacksonville, I'm a co-founder of it's called the Jax Podcasters United, and we hosted our first and new annual event last December. And what we did is we made color-coded badges. So we could kind of show that who are the veteran podcasters, who were brand new to podcasting, who was a podcast vendor or a sponsor. And so the idea was that it could help facilitate conversations. And we kind of, guided the veteran podcasters to go seek out the newbies and to see what kind of questions that they had and if they could help. And so that was an easier way to sort of quickly identify, who was new, who was a veteran, who could maybe help out with different solutions. So I would like to see that at more events.
Yeah, without a status attached to it. Like there's nothing wrong with being new. You just need you can share different advice and receive different advice. So
right.
I like that. That's interesting. Yeah. The name it's just we're all on the same boat. It's like you see someone's face and then you really quickly try and fit, like, wait, I know that what's their name, but yeah, one day we'll be walking around with like our LinkedIn profile hologram over our head.
Yeah. Well, Manifest did great with their name badges this year. This was my first time attending. I do like this new ability to scan someone else's badge and you connect with them.
Yeah.
That makes a huge difference instead of like you just bumped up to each other and you hit a button and it like connected you. And I think the easier it is to connect with people, the more likely it is to happen. So ladies, on that note, we do have to wrap. But if you listen to this podcast and there's something that we missed, or you have some great insight for other people with conferences, trade shows, where to go, how to approach stuff, please put in the comments, because what we're trying to do is teach people, give people insight, and let them, do some great things with this knowledge that we're trying to gather for them. So thank you for listening, and we will see you again here on LLC. Have a great rest of the day, everybody.
Bye, everyone.